Welcome once again to another edition of the Throwing Bagels Podcast. Kevin Mooney here with you. Hello. And I'm joined, as always, by Jason Hamo. Hey, Jason.
Hello, guys. I'm here today.
You're here. Yes. Good to have you. Good to have you back. Chris Douglas, of course, here as well. Hola, Chris.
Hey, Kevin. How are things?
Things are fantastic. And
Wonderful.
yourself?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Can't ask for anything better.
No. and, and joining us now on this edition of the Throwing Bagels podcast, fellow Oswego grad, as a lot of them are on our podcast, because the three of us are all Oswego grads, so we'd love to talk to as many fellow Lakers as we can. But he is a professor of meteorology at SUNY Oswego, and also director of the Lake Effect Storm Prediction and Research Center on campus. It's our genuine pleasure to welcome in Dr. Scott Steiger. Hey, Scott.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you all for having me. It's a pleasure.
No, it's great having you on. We're going to talk about all things weather here over this conversation. But first off, you recently, Scott, spoke with another Oswego alum, News Channel 9 meteorologist John T. Pasquale, about how there have been a record number of tornadoes reported in New York State this year. We're now at 26 and counting. That surpasses the record of 25 tornado reports set back in 1992. I mean, what's driving all the tornado activity in New York this year?
Well, that's a question that is going to take time to answer. Tornadoes.
We got that.
Yeah. And tornado seasons are very up and down, right? There's on average, New York gets about 9 tornadoes every summer, generally. And that surprises people to know that we actually do get tornadoes, but generally they're very weak. They're not very noticeable by the public. They're not newsworthy. But this summer, they have been very destructive, especially that one near Rome and then that one south of Buffalo. I mean, flipping cars, damaging, brick buildings. That's like Oklahoma. And so this has been very unusual in terms of the not only number, but how intense they've been. I do want to point out, though, that in May of 98, I believe, there were 2 F3 tornadoes that hit New York near Albany and Binghamton. So this does happen, believe it or not. Maybe not the sheer number that we've had this year, but we do get tornadoes and they can be destructive in New York. But yeah, this summer has been very unusual overall. Yeah.
When we see tornadoes, generally, I mean, like you said, Oklahoma, right, in the Midwest, would you say it's usually a less populated area, right? We're not going to see them as much in, coming through downtown Syracuse or generally in New York City, right? We're going to see them usually in more rural areas of the state.
It's hard to say. I mean, they're very, here's the reason why that you might not be used to them hitting a populated area. They're small. I mean, tornadoes are usually just a few hundred yards wide, right? Which sounds kind of big because it's like 3 football stadiums wide, but still, they're pretty small. So the chance of it hitting a highly populous area is small. But I will point out, in the same year, September of 98, Syracuse got hit by a derecho, which is a very strong downburst, right? It's a group of downbursts. It's not rotating wind, it's just straight winds. And that caused horrific damage at the state fair. I don't know if you guys remember that, and killed 3 people at the fair.
I do remember that. Yeah.
These things can happen in populated areas. Just luckily, they're small, so the chance is small for them to hit a populated area.
So it's a different type of storm. It's not like necessarily a tornado per se, but it's like a windstorm.
Yeah, yeah, and they're not as sexy as tornadoes, but I mean these straight line winds that come out of thunderstorms can do just as bad damage. I mean that I remember that I was a senior at Oswego and that hit, and it hit Oswego, but didn't cause the damage until it hit Syracuse. And there were brick buildings damaged by that as well. So even though the winds were going straight instead of rotating.
That makes sense, because we had actually a storm in my town recently, and actually knocked a tree over onto the roof of someone's house. So, and it was like similar to what you're saying, like a very windy storm, so that makes a lot of sense. What points of data are needed to determine whether a tornado indeed touches down somewhere?
Well, it generally starts with one of two things. Either someone visually saw the tornado or the weather radar indicated strong rotation. If any one of those, if those one of those two things happen, then the National Weather Service sends a team of two or three meteorologists to check the damage. And, sometimes they'll use helicopters to kind of look down and see the pattern and the damage. And if it looks like there's any kind of rotation in, let's say, the trees that fell down, how they're lined out. Are they in a rotated area or are they more flat, all going in one direction? That helps the meteorologist determine whether or not it was a tornado versus straight line wind. And then they use, what they call damage indicators, which is it a well-structured building? Is it an old barn? Right. And then they rate how damaged those things were. And if, for example, you have a well-constructed building made of brick or concrete, that has been leveled, then it probably was an F4, F5 tornado, versus, let's say, it was an old barn that was completely destroyed. Maybe that would only be ranked an F1 or F2 tornado at most. So it's kind of like playing a detective or forensics, right? You're kind of looking at clues to see what exactly happened and how strong it was.
How do you report one? Like, how does someone go about reporting a tornado? Is it just any random person who can do it, or is it like
Pretty much. Ideally, the National Weather Service trains what they call skywarn spotters, and they'll advertise this in like your local newspaper, online, or in print or whatever. And they try to get the public who are really like weather weenies. We call them. They're really into weather, but they're not necessarily meteorologists. And yeah, and what they'll do is they're trained over an evening about how to spot storms, and then but them or even anyone who hasn't been trained could tweet, let's say, or X, whatever it's called, a post now, their picture at the National Weather Service, Buffalo, for example. That's the local office that Oswego's under. And, then the Weather Service would know. And they ideally, if you take a picture of the tornado and send it to them, that definitely gives them confidence that a tornado happened. Yeah.
Is, in your opinion, your professional opinion, is upstate New York becoming Tornado Alley?
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, we have one summer that we've definitely gotten more tornadoes than usual and more destructive than usual. Is there a trend of more tornadoes, per decade, let's say, in New York? I haven't seen any evidence of that. I mean, one reason why the number of tornado reports have gone up over the decades is because more people are chasing these things. More people are, even in New York, more people are going out and looking for these things. So that could be part of the reason why we're getting more reports. But even that, I don't know for sure if the trend line has been up for New York State in particular. I know overall for the country, the number of tornado reports have increased substantially over the decades, but we think a lot of that is due to more people living in these areas and chasing these things. One of the indicators of are more tornadoes happening in our country is, are there more strong tornadoes happening, like F2 or greater? Because, if you get a stronger tornado, the chance of it being reported is high. And the number of strong tornadoes really hasn't changed too much over the past several decades, but definitely the area where they're happening has expanded, I would say. For example, typical tornado alleys like Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas. Now we're seeing a lot more stronger tornadoes in places like Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, where more people live, and that is definitely a concern.
is is climate change really like affecting the amount of tornadoes we're seeing? Because I've heard hurricanes, in the Atlantic are ticking up because of climate change. Could the same thing happen for tornadoes?
It's a bit different. So first of all, I'm glad you brought this up about hurricanes because a lot of people don't know the difference, right? Hurricanes are big, like 1,000-mile wide storms, right? With that eye in the middle, in a lot of them. Tornadoes are these tiny little whirlwinds, basically, that are at most a mile wide most of the time, which is still big, but not as big as a hurricane. Hurricanes feed off the water, right? They really feed off the warmth of the water because the warmer the ocean water is, the more evaporation happens and water can condense in the hurricane, making it stronger. There is strong evidence that with climate change, global warming, our hurricanes are getting more intense. Like the rate of how quickly they intensify is increasing. Like you can go from a Cat 1 to a Cat 5 much faster nowadays than the environment could have done, 40 years ago because the oceans are warmer. No doubt of no, I mean 99.9% Yes, that's what's going on. Warmer waters, hurricanes are able to intensify more. Tornadoes, I like to call them, and I've heard other people call them this, they're freaks of nature. I mean, they just spin up so quickly. And what drives whether or not they happen is where thunderstorms happen, small thunderstorms. And there's a lot of intricate processes going on in a thunderstorm that kind of, it's like the Goldilocks, where you need everything just to go right for a tornado to actually form in a thunderstorm. And are those conditions happening that make a tornado more likely to happen nowadays compared to a few decades ago? That question we do not have an answer to. It's still really up in the air. We definitely have higher confidence with hurricanes and climate change, but tornadoes and climate change, it's really we don't know. We don't know how in a globally warm world tornadoes frequency and intensity are going to change.
When you assign F1, F2, F3, is that a linear scale or is it an exponential scale like the Richter scale?
It's so the now it's called the enhanced Fujita scale, so we call it the EF scale, but I'll interchange and just call it F sometimes to be, shorthanded. But basically, it's a damage scale. It relates damage to a wind speed range. So I wouldn't necessarily call it linear. It's basically, the force wind exerts on a building, let's say, it's not linear, right? So if you
Right.
double the wind speed, you're really putting 8 times the force on a building, right? So it's not really linear in that respect. And the EF scale, the enhanced Fujita scale, really is saying, okay, I see this kind of damage. This wind speed range could have produced that damage, right? That's essentially what the Fujita scale is saying. If the tornado didn't hit anything of significance, then we really don't know how strong it was,
Mhm.
right? It's just a damage scale. It really doesn't tell us exactly what the wind speeds are in a tornado. The best way to get wind speeds in a tornado is to drive a weather radar or dock the weather radar up to near the tornado, and then you can get good estimates of the wind speed. For example, we did that this past spring during a National Science Foundation project, and we measured wind speeds over 300 miles per hour in a tornado in Iowa.
Wow.
It completely obliterated a town, the Greenfield, Iowa tornado on May 21st this past year, completely obliterated that town. Unfortunately, killed 5 people. And I was within 3/4 of a mile of that thing, dropping instruments in front of it. It
Wow.
was a very intense tornado. But you know what? It was only rated an EF4 tornado because it didn't hit the right kind of buildings to assess a damage with a wind speed range.
Mhm.
So that's really important for people to know. The EF scale, F scale is really a damage scale, not necessarily a wind speed scale.
Are tornadoes more prevalent here in the United States versus other countries or other parts of the world?
Yes. I mean, and I say this about Eastern Lake Ontario, God could not have produced a better environment for heavy snow than east of Lake Ontario, with the long end of the lake hitting the Tug Hill Plateau. God or Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it, couldn't have produced a better environment for tornadic storms and really strong thunderstorms than the Great Plains of our country, where the proximity of the Gulf of Mexico is, the Rocky Mountains, the flatness of the land, right? It just makes it an ideal setup. And we've done studies that have shown that environmentally, that area of the world, the central United States, is the prime area for strong tornadoes in the world. Now, other places get tornadoes. I mean, a lot of different places. China, parts of Europe have these little tornado alleys in them. But the United States, central United States, is the top spot.
And what about water spouts? Like, do those ever come off the water onto land and then, do their thing that way?
Yeah, water spouts are technically tornadoes, just like you
Mhm.
said. And Oswego, we see a lot of them. I just photographed one last week. I mean, I was in my office in Shinneman Science Center on campus and working on something, looked out my window, and there it was. And I had to run up to the roof and take pictures of it. So yes, they are tornadoes, but the energy for that tornado is that warm water, right? Kind of like a
Mhm.
hurricane, but much different process going on. But that warm water allows the air to accelerate upward quickly and makes the spin kind of focus into a water spout. Once the water spout moves off the water onto land, it loses that source of buoyancy of helping the air lift rapidly. So the water spout typically weakens quickly once it makes landfall. It can still flip over a picnic table, and it can certainly flip over a boat, a smaller boat if it interacts with the water spout. So they are dangerous. I wouldn't recommend people running into them. But once they get a mile inland, they usually fall apart.
So back to the taking the students on the chase expedition.
Hmm.
What's been the reactions of the students, to going on these chases? Like, how do they react to it, and what are their roles in it?
Yeah, no, great question. They always come back. I do a evaluation after the storm chase course and trip, and they always come back and say it was well worth the money, and they really learned a lot because the lab for a meteorologist is not a class. It's not in a building, right? It's outside, and a lot of students are not going to be once they get their meteorology degree. They're not going to be working in New York. They're going to be working in places that get different kinds of severe weather. So I want to expose them to that different kinds of severe weather and how to forecast for it. So they always come back. They're really excited about what they've seen, what they've learned. I mean, yes, it is kind of an adrenaline rush, but my goal is the learning, getting them to experience a storm and forecast for it, do research on it. But generally, I mean, not generally, I mean, every person who's gone on, I've been doing this since 2007 with students pretty much every year, and students just love it. They really recommend it to their other students. The only negative is that it costs a bit of money. It's $2,500 to go per student. And we just got good news today though on an alumnus, I won't mention name, but alumnus just offered to help needy students to go on the storm chase course. So that I'm really excited about, because if I could do it, I'd love to make this course free for students because they get so much out of it as meteorology students.
Good job, Chris.
Oh,
It's my pleasure, of course.
no names. I'm not saying. But yeah, I mean, a lot of students, they don't have that kind of money to go. So I'm grateful that whatever support alumni can give us, it's been great. I'm looking into applying for grants as well to try and see if we can reduce the cost for students. But those who go really always say it's well worth the money and they learned a lot from it.
How many kids usually go?
Generally 10 to 15. So I take two 12-passenger vans because I also bring weather balloon equipment and other meteorological equipment where the students can do research around the storms as well.
So you're trusting another student to drive with you? Do you have a partner that goes another professor goes with you?
Typically, another professor will
Okay,
go,
good.
and also I hire people who've storm chased before, who because it's stressful, guys. I mean, I'm telling them where to go. Like, you got to go here, go there. It's like a game of chess every storm chase day because you're trying to place yourself in the path of storms, and it can be quite stressful for the drivers. So I hire experienced drivers to drive us and the students near these storms to observe them and do the research. Yeah.
It seems like meteorologists are incredibly passionate about their work, like unbelievably passionate about their work. Why is that? Why? I don't think you get that in really any other field, but meteorologists, for some reason, are just way off the charts passionate about it. Why?
A lot of it goes back to their childhood. They experience a big snowstorm, a nor'easter. They experience a big lake effect snowstorm. They experience a severe thunderstorm. I can tell you what got me into weather. It was a hailstorm. I remember witnessing a hailstorm when I was like 8 years old. I was like, how the hell is this happening during the summer, getting these chunks of ice falling on the ground? And then lake effect snow growing up near Rochester would drive me nuts because some places would get it, some places wouldn't. And so it just sparks this curiosity in people. I think everyone is curious. And whenever you hear thunder, people are like, whoa, what was that? Or they look outside and they see a whiteout. I think every human being is intrigued by, active weather. There's just something inside of a budding meteorology major where they want to know. First of all, they do want to see it. They just really, not the death and the destruction, of course, but just seeing the atmosphere in action really just excites them, right? It just really excites them. Like, whenever there's a water spout and they run up to the roof, watch out, they'll run you over, right? I mean, they really want to see and get up there and see it. And then, the trying to figure out Mother Nature's handiwork. I mean, like, what makes these storms tick? How can we get better? Yes, they have to take a lot of comedy because I think behind lawyers we're the most fun of major, most fun of profession. Oh, it's the only job you can get paid and be 50% right. I mean, I've heard that so many times. So it takes some thick skin, certainly. Because yeah, if you're a meteorologist on TV or media, I mean, some of what I've seen written about my students by, some crazy people, I think, on social media, you got thick skin to handle some of the criticism, no doubt about that. But no, that they just a lot of it goes back to when they were 5 to 10 years old, and they've had this in them since. And it does hit some of the meteorology majors their freshman, sophomore year when there's quite a bit of calculus, quite a bit of math, and that really pulls at my heart because I see that passion, but they just aren't in it with the math. So, a lot of them will go on to different majors, different professions, but still become a skywarn spotter or be involved with the National Weather Service some other way. So they still keep that passion going. It's just all the math and physics part of it, can be really, really difficult and challenging for them. But sometimes they're struggling and they really try and ask questions and they succeed and graduate. For me, that's the highlight of being a professor. That's what's great.
When a meteorologist says, so let's say I'm in front of my TV watching one of those meteorologists and they say 50% chance of rain or 50% chance of snow, what exactly does that mean?
Yes, this is a big area of research. There's actually whole international conferences on weather communication. How do we effectively communicate a forecast to the public so they behave in a way we want them to, right? And for example, during the summer, you hear a 30% chance of a thunderstorm.
Hmm.
What that means is that in the viewing area, let's say, 30% of the area will get hit by a thunderstorm, we think. So there will be thunderstorms. It's just, thunderstorms are scattered. So it's really hard to pinpoint exactly who's going to get the thunderstorm, let's say a day or two at a time. So that's why we use probability because we're like, yeah, there's a decent chance of thunderstorms, but it won't cover most of the area, but some will get it. So how do we get the people, to react appropriately? Well, probably you don't want to maybe have your wedding outside that day then because, I mean, 30% chance sounds small, but it's significant. Maybe you shouldn't plan on putting on a roof that day, right? I mean, 30% chance is still significant. So, that is one of the big disconnects. Also, what's the difference between a watch and a warning? A lot of the public doesn't know that. A warning is more serious than a watch. It means that either the thing is happening or it's about to happen when you hear of a warning. So,
Mhm.
we have a long way to go as meteorologists to improve how we communicate and when we communicate things, what does it mean? We want the public to understand that. When we say a high of 75, what does that mean? Well, it could be maybe 70 to 80, or it could be 73 to 77. Generally to the public, 73 to 77 doesn't really matter. But if it's 30 versus 33, that's a big difference, right? Because then you can get ice. So, we have that's a very active area of research. I mean, with computers and artificial intelligence, our ability to forecast the weather is constantly getting better. But, what's not getting better is probably our communication. We need to keep working on that better.
So let's go back to the complaints that people have for a second. Because no, I have a good scenario here. So yesterday, right, in my area, we had heard all week it was going to rain Sunday. It was going to rain Sunday. We were like, okay, we're going to go to the pool on Sunday, and then we're like, we're not going to the pool on Sunday, right? Because it's going to rain. And then it literally didn't rain until about 5:30, 6 o'clock, right? So now everyone is all annoyed because they're like, we could have done all this stuff during the day. We could have. So how do you go about predicting what time around the timing, of storms and things like that?
Yeah, well, good question. I mean, the forecast process always starts with looking at like current conditions. What's the current satellite look like, radar, surface weather observations, and then we take that data and build a mental model in our head about what's the pattern, what's going on. And if it's let's say it's tomorrow morning and I'm forecasting for tomorrow afternoon, just based on that pattern, I can give you a pretty good forecast about when it will rain. Probably, at 2 o'clock. 2 to 5, it's going to rain, something like that. The other big tools we use are computer models. And we have, I don't know, tens to maybe over 100 computer models that the federal government runs. So, and it's freely available. It's on the internet. Your tax dollars pay for these things. So it's freely available. Now, typically, you would want to train meteorologists to look at those models and the output from the models to best interpret them, and then that can help me enhance or narrow down that time range when I think it's going to rain and what the chance of that rain is going to be. Now, what I tell the public, is, I can give you websites and suggest websites where you can become your own weather forecaster. But really, my best source of information I have for the public is to go to your local National Weather Service webpage. So, I mean, where are you from, Jason?
I live in like central New Jersey.
Central New Jersey. So, if you go to weather.gov, there's a big map of the country, and you click on your area, Central New Jersey. I think you might be under.
I think it's Mount Holly.
Mount Holly, yeah, the Weather Service, Mount Holly. Yep. If you go there, go to their website, and they have hour by hour. There's a place you can click on. It gives you hour by hour when they think it's going to rain. So I think for the public that they're the experts in your area, and that to me is the most accurate weather information. I like TV stations. Don't get me wrong. My dad still uses the newspaper. I'm like, Dad, that's like 24 hours old. But what I highly recommend is people to go to some of these sources, and you could ask your local TV meteorologist, email them and be like, what are some other good websites for me to look at to get a good idea what the forecast is going to be tomorrow or the next day? Because we can certainly help you become your own forecaster, but also point you to where there are some really good meteorology websites that will give you the forecast kind of on an hour by hour basis. There's still going to be error. I mean, especially with things like thunderstorms. I mean, they're so scattered, it's really hard to predict exactly where they're going to form.
I think the biggest complaint is the winter, is the snowstorms, right? I mean, for us, right, compared to what you guys normally get, is not as much down here, right? But let's say we're going to get, 8 to 10 inches of snow one day that they're predicting, and then all of a sudden we get like 2, and then everyone's like, they closed school for no reason,
Yeah.
and like everyone starts freaking out. It's like pitchforks are up,
Yep. Well, here's the thing. Everyone's going to complain one way or the other.
Yes.
If you forecast too low or too high snowfall,
Right.
people are going to complain.
Yeah.
Most people probably will complain more in the scenario you mentioned, where you forecast a foot of snow and you only get 2 inches, because people get excited. They get hyped up for these big snowstorms. And when they don't happen, they're like, oh, this sucks. I was hoping to get a big snowstorm. But yeah, I mean, and the media and social media are kind of our enemy in this regard, because how do you get viewers? Hype things up, So, I know meteorologists on the TV stations like John T. Pasquale, they really don't, they try not to hype it up. They try to just tell it as it is. But the producers and so forth at the TV stations, we, try to hype it up as much as you can but still trying to be accurate. So, yeah, I hear you. It happens all the time. We work for the school district here in Oswego, and if they close and it doesn't snow, parents are out with pitchforks. If it snows 2 inches during commute time and you didn't close or delay things, parents are out with pitchforks.
Yeah.
So
No, I hear you. It's pretty crazy,
yeah.
how quickly the tide turns, and it's like these people get, I mean, forget about the supermarkets, bread and eggs and milk all off the shelves, nothing left, but
That's great. I laugh about the bread and eggs and everything, because we had a big Lake Effect snowstorm 2007 in Oswego. We got like 70 inches in a week, and CNN was here looking for the little old woman stuck in her house, and it's like, well, that doesn't happen anymore, because within a day of the snowstorm ending, the plows clean everything out. So, yeah, boy, but some people think grocery stores pay meteorologists to hype it up because they'll get there.
It wouldn't surprise me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Well, we mentioned at the top of the show that you're the director of the Lake Effect Storm Prediction and Research Center. What services does that provide to the meteorology community?
Yeah, it's kind of it has both operational and research aspects to this center. It's kind of our way at SUNY Oswego of organizing our lake effect research. So our grant writing and grant proposals and getting money and funding students to go outside with the Doppler on wheels weather radar, for example. We kind of organize our thoughts and our plans through this center. And then we also have an operational way where we give students typically 10 to 15 students every year. I hire, if you will, to give them experiences where they're updating a website for points around the central New York area for different school districts and DOT points. And it's a website that gives them hour by hour forecasts, a little paragraph, maps, and so forth. And they're able to email or call us. Like I get calls at 4:30 in the morning, by a superintendent, right, to figure out what they should do. I never tell my students, I never tell them what to do, and I tell my students never tell the superintendent what to do. Just give them the forecast
Yeah.
and the impacts. Let them. That's why they get paid big money. Let them make the decision whether or not to close school. So basically, it's a great way of doing research and applying what we learn to forecasting for actual clients. And I know students being involved with the LESPaRC has helped them get jobs. So it benefits everyone, and I hope to be able to keep doing this for the foreseeable future.
So we know that that Oswego has a very good broadcasting school, but the meteorology program in Oswego is also very good for aspiring meteorologists. So how does the meteorology program at Oswego stack up versus other schools in around the country?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think, overall we are well respected. I believe that based on the number of students that get to go to graduate school, get good jobs with the Weather Service or on TV stations. So I think we're preparing our students well based on that. Um, New York has probably, for one state, the most meteorology programs. We have SUNY Brockport, SUNY Oneonta, SUNY Oswego, Cornell, SUNY Stony Brook, and SUNY Albany. So there's
Mhm.
6 schools in New York that teach meteorology. That's, like, for example, Texas, the big state of Texas, only has one school that teaches undergraduate meteorology, Texas A&M.
Mhm.
So, meteorology is kind of a niche field. It's not a ton of programs across the country. But in New York State, and the country, I think we are ranked. I mean, I don't think there's any official rankings. I mean,
Mhm.
there's rankings out there that will put us in maybe the top 10 or the top 20 out of all the schools that teach meteorology in the country. But I don't think those are like official rankings. But I mean, bottom line is I always ask my students after they've been working for a while or been in graduate school, did we prepare you well? What could we have done differently to prepare you better for your next step? And, sometimes they'll have some comments of what to teach in a course differently, but in general, they're like, no, we feel well prepared for the next step. So I'm really pleased with that. I mean, I am surrounded by colleagues, Dr. Skubis and Dr. Wong. We just lost a meteorology professor. She moved to be with her fiance, so that was sad. But I've been surrounded by really good colleagues in my 20 years here that, oh my God, like Dr. Skubis, he'll stay till midnight to work with a student on a problem in the computer lab. I mean, we're just blessed here to have some really, really strong professors. When I was here as a student, to now, and I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about my colleagues. I'm just really
Mhm.
blessed that they're so willing to help the students and they're so intelligent. So yeah, we're in good shape. I hope we can hire a fourth position to replace the person who just left. So that hopefully will happen this year.
Scott, earlier you mentioned, witnessing a hailstorm when you were little that kind of fueled your interest in meteorology. What led you to pursue a degree in it at Oswego? What led you to choose Oswego? And then,
Yeah,
sorry, Scott. And then after that, you went to Texas A&M to pursue
yeah, no,
graduate
that's
work. Yeah.
that's a good story. Good question. I first heard about Oswego having meteorology by my sister went to Oswego and she's 6 years older than me. She didn't stay to graduate, but I remember one of her folders that she had, like I was in eighth grade or whatever when she went to Oswego, and I saw meteorology listed as one of the majors. Like, oh, Oswego has meteorology, cool. And then I remember hearing news stories about how Oswego gets hit by heavy snow a lot. I'm like, oh man, that sounds exciting. My dream place to go was actually Cornell. There was a TV meteorologist in Rochester. His name is Kevin Williams, and I loved him. I just his persona and everything. And he went to Cornell, and I'm like, I want to go to Cornell. But I had to pay for my own education, and I just couldn't afford to go to Cornell. And I remember so Oswego was my second choice, and I wound up going to Oswego. My first weekend on campus at Oswego, I remember I was kind of sad that I wasn't going to Cornell, and my mom said on the phone to me, she's like, just be open-minded. Give Oswego a chance. See what happens. And boy, am I glad she said that and gave me that advice because I worked hard in Oswego. I learned to love, I mean, I loved Oswego pretty much right after I got here. I made great friends, loved the meteorology program. And this is the truth. On graduation day for me in 99, I remember telling one of the administrators that it would be a dream to come back to Oswego to teach. I'm dead serious. That was a dream because I just love the family atmosphere. I love being on the lake. I love the active weather. So, if I went to Cornell, probably none of this would have happened, right? So I'm grateful now. You just never know where the road you're going on is going to lead you. As long as you're open-minded and positive, really good things can happen for you. So I share that story with my students a lot. And then it's interesting for grad school, I really wanted to go to Oklahoma University. Um, to this day, I'm still waiting for my rejection letter from Oklahoma University. I never got it. I never got it.
Ah,
So I went to
That's
my
rude.
second. Yeah, can you believe that? And so I went to my second choice again, just like Oswego was my second choice for undergrad. Second choice for graduate school is Texas A&M. I loved it there. I got to do a lot of storm chasing. I did lightning research there. I had a lot of good friends. Got a wife out of going to Texas A&M because she's a Texan. She was going there at the same time. So I think a good lesson to learn from me and why I share it is, maybe things don't go the way you want them to go, but as long as you keep your head up and work hard and be positive about it, good things will happen. I mean, bad things happen in my life too, but more good than bad as long as I keep that positive attitude.
So
Do a lot of Go ahead, Chris.
go ahead. I was going to say, I was going to ask a question. How did you ask your wife to come up to New York from Texas? That has to be a good story as well.
From Corpus Christi, Texas, which they really don't get snow down. That's
Yeah, that's
really
like south. That's like
Yeah.
far south.
Yeah,
Jeez.
it's on the beach.
Yeah,
Um,
it's hurricane territory.
yeah, yeah. It didn't take much convincing because my wife is she's a very strong individual, very independent, and wanted to experience a different climate. Now, I will say the second winter, I think she was here. Yeah. We one week in February, we were getting snow. That was the week we got 72 inches of snow. We had to shovel every morning and
Wow.
evening, right? And she looked at me and said, Scott, if it's like this, I don't know if I can stay here. And luckily, I mean, yes, we kind of get big snowstorms in Oswego, but really it's the Tug Hill, it's Redfield, those areas that get that kind of storm every winter. So luckily, we haven't really gotten a bad storm like that since, or too often. So she's learned to love it here. She loves it here. She loves the fall, the change of seasons, and she misses her family, of course. But we go down there, try to go down there once a year. So it wasn't too much of a sell because she was looking forward to the change of seasons and experiencing a different place.
Do a lot of meteorology undergrad majors go to grad school? I know some people who actually went back, not they weren't meteorology majors originally, but they ended up going back and doing like Mississippi State
Mm.
online.
Mhm.
But do a lot of meteorology majors tend to go and get their masters as well?
I would, right off the bat, so let's say we graduate 15 students. Probably about 4 or 5 of them will go to grad school right off the bat, that next year. Now, the rest of those, let's say the other 10 over the rest of their careers, maybe, a couple of them will go pursue graduate studies in meteorology as well. So, yeah, I think, you're talking a third to maybe a half of the meteorology majors that graduate from Oswego will go to higher ed, if you will, to get their master's degree or PhDs in meteorology. Because yeah, I mean, it's just true for any undergraduate major. An undergraduate degree really is just an introduction to your field, right? you learn a lot more on the job and in graduate school. And I mean, mainly you do most of your learning on the job, right?
Hmm.
But you got to have some bedrock there, and that's really what an undergraduate education gives you. So yeah, several students will go on to grad work after Oswego.
So besides, saying that you wanted to come back and teach at Oswego when you graduated, when did you decide really to pursue teaching? Like, was it like obviously you had thought about it, back in 1999, but like,
Mhm.
was it really a seed in your head, or like, did you want to do other things first and then maybe kind of do that later?
I pretty much have known since maybe high school, undergrad, that I had an interest in teaching meteorology because, guys, this is, I get paid to talk about weather every day. I mean, that's pretty cool. I don't like grading as much, but I get paid to talk about weather. It's fun. I don't make a lot of money being a teacher. No one ever does as a teacher, but I live a comfortable life. Everything's good. But the bottom line is I get to talk about weather every day. So that was really attractive to me to be a professor. It's a pretty neat story how I wound up in Oswego. It was July 2003. After I graduated in 99, I would shoot my meteorology professors an email maybe once a year, letting them know what I was up to, and I'd like to work. I told them I would like to work in academia. Let me know if you have any jobs, right? So in July of 2003, SUNY Oswego's meteorology program was in a pickle. They just had someone leave and they needed to fill the position like in a couple months. With a not a tenure track, but a visiting assistant professor line, like a temporary line to teach. And so my old professor emailed me and said, "Hey, are you still interested in teaching?" I was like, "Yeah." And as it turned out, I didn't have my PhD done, but I was pretty much done with all the coursework. So I just was doing the research. So I moved back to Oswego and taught, but also finished my research at night while I was here those first couple of years and got my PhD and then got to stay and applied for the tenure track line and got that. So that's another lesson I teach my students is stay in touch with your professors, because we know about jobs and certainly we want to help you. So that's what I did. That's how I got my job was because I stayed in touch with people.
So two-prong question. Did you ever think about wanting to do, radio or television?
Mm.
And how kind of, similar to the broadcasting field, like we came into school for broadcasting and, a lot of us we're like, we want to be on air, we want to be on radio, we want to be on television. How many meteorologists saying, I want to be a weatherman on TV or radio, probably mostly TV, I'm assuming, but versus the people that just come in and say, I just want to be a meteorologist and work kind of behind the scenes and do that other kind of thing.
I would a good percentage. I mean, because let's face it, the TV meteorologist is really the face of meteorology. I mean, that's where people know what a meteorologist does and is. So, probably a good 20%, 25% of our majors want to go into broadcasting. It used to be a larger percentage back in the day, maybe 30, 40 years ago. But maybe not maybe that long, maybe 20 years ago. It was a larger percentage. Maybe half of the students wanted to go into broadcasting. But now, a lot of students see there's a lot of research opportunities. They see TV shows of people chasing tornadoes and flying in hurricanes. And so a lot of our majors come in wanting to do stuff like that. So it's quite a variety, but still there's a significant proportion that want to go into broadcasting. And I looked into that. When I was an undergrad, I worked at WTOP. So I remember being a TV meteorologist on TOP, and I enjoyed it. And then when I was in grad school, I took a broadcast meteorology course at A&M with a broadcast meteorologist out of Dallas. So that was pretty big market and got to know a bit more about the business. But being a teacher for me seemed more attractive, and also the hours of a TV meteorologist that can be tough, right? You either got to go in at 4 a.m. or stay till midnight. And, not that that would be a problem, but it's just more attractive to work a 9 to 5 job, for me. But meteorology is a 24/7, 365-day job, right? So
Mhm.
if you go into forecasting, you will be working Christmas. You will be working 12 to 8 a.m. right? So it is there. It just being a professor, it's a little bit easier where I can control my hours more.
And what about the there are people out there. I think Al Roker might be one of these people. Like he's actually not a meteorologist, right? He's a weatherman, right?
Yep.
So obviously there's the difference, right? He doesn't have a meteorology degree. He's just a TV personality, so to speak. But I'm sure he's learned a lot about the weather over the years. Obviously, he's been doing it for so long.
Yes.
Like, what's the difference and how often do people do that? Do you ever see people that are like, I don't want to be a meteorologist, but I want to be a weatherman?
Yeah, and just let me talk about Al a little bit because I've gotten to meet him, and he knows his weather. All right, he's taken meteorology courses when he was at Oswego. He definitely did. And yes, he has a great personality. That's, I'm sure, the biggest reason why he's on TV and why he made it far, because he has a great personality. But he does have weather education, and from experience, you learn a lot
Mhm.
as well. Now, nowadays, back in the 90s and before, right? I'm trying to word this correctly. It really was about mostly your personality, your looks, and it still is. It still is an important part about being on TV is your personality and your looks. But they really want you to have that meteorology degree. TV
Yeah.
stations want you to have that meteorology degree now, whereas in the 90s and before, it didn't matter as much. So it's become more of a respected science, I think, and that's why they
Mhm.
really want you to have that degree. Now, there still are avenues, I think, for people to get on, become an on-air meteorologist without getting the BS degree. And that's, for example, one reason why we developed a minor. We have a minor in meteorology now. So I think that and having a communications degree or broadcasting degree and experience, I think would definitely make you qualify to be a TV meteorologist. Um, so yeah, I think there are still avenues, but it's not as common as it once was to be an on-air TV meteorologist or radio meteorologist without a BS degree, a bachelor's degree in meteorology.
All right, Scott, this is usually our last question that we ask all of our alumni, and it's probably our favorite thing to do around here. So back when we were in Oswego, we ate at the dining halls, of course, and our favorite sandwich to eat was a chicken patty sandwich. Is your what was your favorite on-campus food that you really just couldn't live without?
It's funny you mentioned the chicken patties, by the way, because that still is a hot ticket item for students, right? I mean,
Of
if
course.
it's chicken patty day, they're lined up. I have to say, it's not just one thing, but it's the desserts. I like the desserts a lot. I still go to the dining hall with my students. We'll have meetings there and stuff like that, and I really do enjoy the desserts the most. In terms of a main entree, boy, I'm trying to think about what I really liked when I was there. Because I lived all 4 years on campus. I was an RA for three of them. I was in Seneca Hall, and then I was an RA in Scales Hall for 3 years.
Mm.
So yeah, I ate at the dining hall all the time. I mean, generally the food was good. I mean, it wasn't too bad. But yeah, just the biggest thing I remember is I really look forward to the desserts. So, I'm Catholic, so I remember Lent came and I would give up desserts, and it was really hard for me to give that up. And one of my good friends, Brad Goldowski, is also class of '99. He would always joke with me because cereal's still dessert because it has sugar, and I would have cereal instead of dessert during Lent.
Definitely
But
not a dessert.
He couldn't be
That's
more
yeah,
wrong. I mean, come
yeah,
on.
cereal's
definitely not a dessert. You're right on
yeah.
track with that one.
Absolutely.
It's a
Yeah.
You're
perfect
good.
substitute.
Yeah.
The Lucky Charms.
Yeah. There's some sugar in it, but it's not dessert. Come on.
Do you have an off-campus spot that you like to go to or indulge in?
It's not here anymore, but I really liked Greens.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yep.
greens.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is more of a laid back atmosphere. They had games there and they had the free popcorn there, right? And that
Mm.
just, as a college student, you love that. Anything free. Um, but no, I would get the woodchuck cider there on tap. I really liked Greens. I was never much, I mean, I went to the shed, but I was never much of a shed guy. And the shed's not here either anymore,
No,
Yeah.
sad.
sadly. But no, Greens was my favorite place to go. And then, of course, right across the street was a sub shop, which I love going to as
Of
well.
course.
So, but That's what's great about being back here as a professor is I get to relive my college days every day, but it's different. It's just
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends here, of course, but it's not that you can't redo college, right? I mean, I mean, sure, at reunion and stuff, it feels like college again, but I definitely miss, I tell my students this all the time. It's like this is the one time in your life you are surrounded by a lot of people your age. And when I'm surrounded by people who they're good people, don't get me wrong, but it's just not as like, oh, it's Thursday night, let's go out, or it's we all know what it's like now. We have to be adults, and that's okay, but we can still have fun. But yeah, I do have a lot of great memories from being a student at Oswego. I mean, I did the Bridge Street run, right? I remember that. That was fun.
Do you remember it though?
What was that?
I said, do you remember it though?
I did the mini Bridge Street run. I think I only went to like 15 bars instead of 30 bars that you could go to. But
Yeah.
I still have my shirt. I have my shirt hanging.
Yeah, I still have mine too.
Wow.
I still have mine too.
Do you really?
I'll break it out one time.
Yeah.
Next time.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's the nice thing about doing the mini run is I mean I didn't really get sick. I started at 2 o'clock, ended at 2 a.m. or whatever, and had pizza. I mean, I was buzzed, don't get me wrong, but it was a good time. I really have just a lot of fun memory. And then of course the hockey games, throwing the bagels. I just was talking to my kids today about that. I was like, yeah, we're not allowed to have as much fun as we used to back in the day.
You can't do that in the campus center. No way.
No, they won't let you do
No, they
Probably get arrested for that now.
And then, what's also interesting, not that I was a fraternity person or whatever, but there's such a lack of fraternities on our campus now, or at least the presence. I don't feel it like I did when I was a student here 25 years ago. So I don't know if just people aren't interested in fraternities anymore. I'm not a student anymore, so I don't know. But yeah, I just remember signs being posted everywhere on campus
Yeah.
for different kinds of
Oh, yeah.
parties, and that doesn't happen. Maybe it's on social media now. It's not posted on the walls anymore.
Could be.
That's true.
Yeah, could
That would
be.
be funny. Those signs are on social media instead.
Oh,
Yeah.
So different.
Snapchat or something like that.
Yeah.
TikTok. Yeah.
Well, when did you all graduate?
So Jason and I were 2000, Chris was 2001. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Okay, so we overlapped a little bit because
Little bit. Yeah.
yeah, cool.
I think we may have been in a class or two together, Scott,
Oh,
or maybe
really?
it was at TOP. We like overlap, but yeah, I definitely remember crossing paths with you at least a few times when we were
Yeah.
students way back when.
Yeah, cool.
Did you take
cool.
any broadcasting classes when you were there? Or were you just strictly in meteorology?
I remember taking one. I think it was a broadcast course on popular media or something. It was looking at we watched TV shows and learned about their social significance, like All in the Family and all that stuff. I remember
Yeah.
that course. I did take a comm course with was it Dr. Boozer, or I don't know if you remember that name.
Yeah, that was health
Yes.
health class. He had a
Health,
health,
okay,
yeah,
yes.
health
He was
science.
he was an interesting guy.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't take too many communication or broadcast courses, but I do recommend that now to my students. I'm like, even if you're not going to go into media, take some communication broadcasting courses because communication is so important to know how to do well in any job or career or field you go into. So I do encourage my students now to do that.
Scott, this has been an absolute blast. Really, really love chatting with you, and thank you so much for joining us, and all the best to you in your career at Oswego.
You're welcome. You're so welcome, guys. Thank you for originally reaching out, Kevin. And it was so nice meeting you, Chris and Jason. And I'm glad I know about this podcast because I definitely want to watch more of these. This is cool. This is a great thing that you guys are doing.
And that was Professor of Meteorology at SUNY Oswego, Director of the Lake Effect Storm Prediction and Research Center at Oswego, and of course, fellow Oswego grad, Dr. Scott Steiger, joining us on the Throwing Bagels podcast. That was a lot of fun.
That was
excellent.
a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
You did, you little weather weenie.
I honestly did you see him getting in there with all these follow-ups and questions? Holy cow.
I got lots of questions, man. What can I say? I like the weather. It's very interesting.
I think, Kevin, this is what's happening with Jason. First, he's making up for lost time. Second, he is he's the dad now. Okay, that's looking out the window with his robe on, just
Yeah.
looking for the snow, and has the Weather Channel on in the background. That's what's happening.
No robe.
My knees swelling up. Must be a storm.
I know, right? I feel it. I could feel it happening. I feel the storm coming.
So this is episode 50.
We're
50.
50 years old.
We did it.
That's crazy. 50 episodes?
Yeah.
And they
That's
said
pretty
it wouldn't
remarkable.
last.
Nice.
They did.
My wife.
Whoa, wow. Is that true?
I don't know. I'm just
I
making
think we need to interview the spouses, or soon-to-be spouses. I think that's what needs to happen soon.
Okay.
I don't feel
Yeah.
like that's going to happen.
So 50, I mean, just to kind of look back to where things were, it was like a couple years ago, right? We were all complaining about the Mets in a group chat, and that's when Chris said his fateful line, "We should do a podcast."
What a terrible idea.
So it's all Chris's fault.
I know.
And the Mets are still
Making me spend
making
all
us
this money, and
mad.
the Mets
Ah.
still stink.
God.
They just blew a 2-run lead.
Yeah, they're
Of course
blowing
they
it
did.
again, of course. The wild card hunt.
You know what's going to happen. The Mets are going to go on a winning streak, and then they're going to go
of
into
course.
it. They're going to go into Atlanta needing to win.
That have
one.
nobody left on their roster.
Right.
Yeah.
They need like 2 out of 3. Right?
No.
And they're-
They need one, Chris. They need one win
and they
to
get
lock
swept.
it up, and they'll get swept.
That's right.
And
That's how it's gonna
literally,
happen.
they have nobody on their roster right now.
All right, I think that'll do it for the 50th edition. 5-0. Congratulations to us all.
Yes.
Fantastic
Congratulations to us, to our staff,
Yes,
to everyone that makes this possible.
that's right. Thank you. We do. We can't say it enough, but thank you for listening or watching, whatever, however you do it. I guess you could watch a video feed, watch an audio feed on YouTube. That's exciting.
I do that.
Okay.
And
Well, thank
sometimes
you
we-
anyway.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Yeah, sure.
To you, the Throwing Bagels podcast fan that has listened, I'm sure, to all 50 of our podcasts. Thank you. And we'll be baking up another one soon. Stay tuned for the next one. You can check us out online, throwingbagels.com. you can
Here's what's happening right now is Jason is throwing up cryptic celebratory things on the page right now. Kevin can't get through the line. That's what's happening right now.
I can't do it.
Throwingbagels.com or wherever you get your podcast. Please email us at throwingbagelspodcast@gmail.com. Is that what it is? All
There
right,
you go,
good.
Chris. Good job.
I got it out. We're also on YouTube. Kevin might throw this up there because we're just cracking up and it's our 50th episode and it's late.
I could do that. I think this
Yeah.
might be the YouTube cut. Well, although, there were some pretty good moments with Scott. So
There was, yes.
Maybe multiple YouTube
Multiple.
clips.
Hey,
About
there's
that.
no limit. There's no
There's no
limit. The
limit.
sky's the limit, my friend.
And we do appreciate Scott for coming on today.
Yes.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. That was really fun.
Yes, it was.
Great
Dr.
guest.
Steiger, I think, will be back. We
Yeah,
discussed
I think so.
that, guys.
We'll-
It's got a
we'll
good
talk-
ring to it.
We'll
It
talk some
does.
sports with him next time, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. He said he was a Bills fan. So, like, his first experience right out of the gate, wide right.
Poor guy. I know.
Rough.
Good for us, bad for
And then
him.
we told them we're all Giants fans.
That's right.
Oh, man.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Scott. But we're pulling for Buffalo, man.
We are.
We really want them
Big
to
Bills
get over
fan.
that hump.
Let's
Yeah,
go.
If the Giants
on.
can't do it,
Oh,
go Buffalo.
The Giants are definitely not doing
let's go
it.
Bills. Come on. Go Bills.
Buffalo
All right.
Bucks.
Goodbye.
Peace out.
Bye.